Welcome back to Python class, and I am Onoyemi Akim. And today we'll be looking at Python loop list. So we're going to look at how we can loop through our list object. So first, let's declare a list. Um, Loop list. Right. So first, let's declare a list object. That is, let's say list one equals. We want to declare our list object to be, okay, we are still making use of fruit, apple, mango, and pawpaw. Right. Now this is our list object, which is list one. How do we want to loop through? We want to loop through each of these lists. When we say loop through, that is, we want to go over it from index one to the last index. So, and how do we loop through? We make use of the for loop, because the first statement is used to go through a list of lists, or to go through a dictionary, to go through a list of tuple, to go through so many other data types collections in Python, because we have four data type collections, which are list, tuple, set, and dictionary. So we are already working on the first collection, which is list. Excuse me. So now let's quickly look through our list one. So we say for x in list one. When we say for x, that is, we are representing the value we want to get from the list as x. Just like when we do mathematics, we say let x be the unknown number. So our x is the unknown value here. That's why we say for x in list. So for every x that we don't know that is inside list one, we want what do we want the system to do? We want it to print all the s that are in the list one value. So when we press enter and we press enter again, what's wrong? List one is not defined. Do you mean list one? Okay, I wrote it with small letter. That's list one. Can you see what the power of capital letter is? So we want it to print x. So now when I press enter, can you see that it has looked through all the values in the list one that we provided, which means for every x, the first value for x is apple, the second value for mango is for x is mango, while the third value for pawpaw is the third value for the third value in the list is pawpaw. So that's the third value for x. So that is how to look through your list. Now we also want to try as much as possible to see if we can loop through with the index number. So we can loop through the value of the list through index number by using range and len. So we can use range or we use length. The range function and the length function are used to carry out suitable iteration for a list object. So let's try to look at an example of such kind of stuff. So we have our list one already as our list. So we are going to say for I'm going to use I now, not x. For I in range, remember I said we are going to use range function and length function. So in range, excuse me, this range is the same thing as the normal range we know in mathematics. can say the range of 2 to 5 or range of 1 to 100. So we want to know the range, and one thing is we want to use the range to determine the number of time it's going to loop through. But here we cannot determine the number of the list if we don't use the length. So the length is will be the one to give us the list. That's why we are going to use length list one. Now explaining this, it means first the list is this. If we put only the list and we don't put the length, it means we are only looking for the range in the list one, which is going to throw error. So in that case, we have to look at the range. We want to provide the value in the range of what we have. Our range here, when we look at the length, is going to give us 3 because we have 0, 1, 2 as the index. We have just 3 values in the list. So when we use length, the length is the one that will determine the total number of the values we have, which is 3. So that 3 will now serve as our range. So and when we say you should write in range of 3, what are you going to write? You're going to write 1, 2, 3. That is the values in 3. So that is what we have here. So we are using the range and the length together to determine the value. Then we put our double quotes, double column, then we press enter, give it a tab and print I. We want to print I now. Then we have our output as 0, 1, 2. So this one will give us this one does not give us the value, rather is giving us the actual index number. It's giving us the actual index number. Then I want to try something if it's going to work. There's something we call loop index. Loop index is to give you list of numbers. So I think when we get to that place, we will make use of it. So that is the output of using the range and length, because the range is to let us know the number of values that are there, while the length is just to tell us, oh, we have 3 values in total, so the range is 3. So we're going to loop 3 times before we can print the output, and that means it's going to give us the index. Then how can we use a while loop in a list? We want to use a while loop to carry out a list. Now we can use a while loop to carry out a list item, and also we have to use the length function to determine the length of the list. Then start at 0 and loop your way through the list by referencing to the indexes. So when you are making use of a while loop, you must always remember to put your to increment your loop. That is, you increment the index number while it's working. So we have the list here, which is list 1. So we are using list 1 in this tutorial. So I won't want you to get it confused. So what we are going to do is we want to loop through using while loop. Remember, we have used for loop. In our last tutorial, I have used if statement. Although we are still going to work with all these if statements to understand them better, we are still going to treat it, but we've worked with if statement whereby we use if to determine the condition if this is in the list, if this is not in the list. So also in this one, we have also used for loop. The for loop is one that make it easier for us to loop through the values to give us the names of the values, and also to give us the index numbers using range and length. Now we want to make use of the while loop. The while loop, when you want to create a while loop, the first thing you need to create is you have to define the starting point, which means we will say I is equals to 0. So this is our starting point. That's our starting point. Then we say while I is greater than length, I mean is less than length, my list, that is list one, create, then give it a tab, print. We want to print I, which is less than the length. We will keep on printing it until when that I is equal to the length. So we want to print list of that I. So we have list I, list with the location of what? I. What's happening? Alright. Then we enter again, give it a tab and write I equals to I plus 1. I plus 1. Now this I plus 1, I can also write it as I just equals 1. Remember the shorthand of writing I equals I plus 1, I or x equals x plus 1, or x plus equals 1. So this is your while loop. Now let me quickly explain this while loop. What this while loop is saying is, first we are going to define the I to start from 0. So if I is 0, it's going to come here. While I is 0, less than length of list. The length of the list is 3. So automatically the initial starting point, which is I, will be less than it, because the I here will be taking the value inside this I, which is 0. So which means 0 is less than the length of list I, which is 3. So if 0 is less than 3, then what should you do? You should print list I. So you should first of all print the first one. Then since it's less than it, we go back to this. Then that I, this I plus equals the I that it got here until the condition is met. So when we press enter, we have this. Okay. Yes, I think we have list 1. Yes. Where have I made the error? This is not defined. Name list. Okay, I can see where I've made the error. Okay, let's quickly rewrite it. I equals to 0. I made the error here. I put list instead of list 1. So I equals to 0, while I is equals to length. This tab, we have print list 1 equals to I. Then I increment 1, that is I plus equals 1. Then we have this. Can you see that it shows us all the values? Meaning once it loop through and it's not, you see that okay, it is 0, it will print that 0, go back again, loop through again, and you see that oh, 0 is now the I is now 1. It will loop through that 1, and if you see that oh, I plus 1 plus 1 is equals to 2, is not yet 3, it will go back again with 2. Then we will go back to check the 2. Once the I is 2, we will say okay, this is the third time. We will go back again and we will confirm oh, I plus 1, that is 2 plus 1 is now 3. That means the I here is starting from 3 again. So immediately the I starts from 3, it will check the condition again and see if it is complete or not. Once the condition is complete, it will stop the looping automatically. Mind you, when you are making use of while loop, you have to be very careful, because if you don't write the block code very well, you might end up having an infinite loop, which might end up crashing your system. So be very careful and be wary of using while loop when you are writing your codes. Also, let's look at looping using list comprehension. There is what we call list comprehension, and list comprehension is just a simpler way of writing a for statement, while statement, or if statement. A simpler way you can write it that you don't need to write all these long stories or long block of code whereby you will only write it on a straight line and you have your list completed. Now we have our list one already. Then let's try to see how to write the with list comprehension. Then we have list being decided, which is the list, uh, the curly braces. Then we write print. What do we want to print? We want to print x. So we put print x. Dat print x, we are here now we want to do the for loop. So let's look at this for loop here. We say for x in list one print x abi. So this x now we have bring this print x, we bring it down. Print x for x in in what? List one. We have written our code this way. Now this way now we have written this long code here that we write has been written here in a short way, and that's what we call list comprehension. The ability to write your line of code on a single line and it carries out all the activities. Now if I press enter, it's going to show me everything. Can you see that? So it says print x for x in list one, and it gave us apple, mango, pawpaw. Then it says none, none, none. I don't know why it's saying